right now, at this exact moment. While you're watching this, your future's already being built. Not by some big dramatic event that hasn't happened yet. Not by a lucky break waiting around the corner. Your future is being constructed brick by brick, quietly, invisibly, by the tiny decisions you're making today. Decisions so small you probably don't even notice you're making most of them. What time you woke up this morning. What you chose to eat for breakfast. Whether you opened a book or opened social media the moment you had 5 free minutes. None of these choices feel important in the moment. And that's exactly the problem. Because the truth is, nothing that shapes your future ever feels important in the moment it's happening. It only becomes obvious years later, when you look back and realize that the life you're living now was built entirely out of 1,000 small moments you barely paid attention to at the time. Today, we're going to break down exactly how this works, why the tiny decisions matter so much more than the big ones, and what you can start doing right now to make sure the future being built out of your choices is actually one you want to live in. And if that sounds like something worth understanding deeply, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because what we're about to walk through together could genuinely reshape how you see every single day from this point forward. Let's start with something most people get completely backwards. When people imagine changing their life, they imagine one big moment, the day they finally quit the job, the day they finally start the business, the day they finally have the difficult conversation they've been avoiding for years. And there's nothing wrong with big moments. They matter. But here's what almost nobody tells you. Big moments are rare. They happen a handful of times in a life. The other 360-something days a year are made up of nothing but small, forgettable choices. And it is those small choices, not the rare big ones, that actually determine whether the big moment, when it finally arrives, finds you ready or finds you exactly where you've always been. Think about it this way. The person who finally gets the opportunity of a lifetime, the audition, the promotion, the investor meeting, didn't get lucky in that single moment. They got lucky because years of tiny, unglamorous decisions had quietly prepared them to be ready the second the door opened. The big moment was never really the turning point. The turning point was every small decision that came before it, decisions nobody was watching. Decisions that felt completely unimportant at the time. Now, here's a concept that explains almost everything about how your future actually gets built. And once you understand it, you'll never look at your daily choices the same way again. It's called the compound effect. And it works exactly the way compound interest works in a bank account, except it applies to every single area of your life, not just your money. Here's how it works. A tiny decision made once has almost no visible impact. Reading 10 pages of a book today won't change your life. Walking for 20 minutes today won't transform your body. Saving $20 today won't make you wealthy. Because of this, most people conclude that these small actions don't matter, and they abandon them almost as quickly as they start. But here's what they're missing. These tiny actions were never meant to work alone. They were meant to be repeated day after day so that their effects could stack on top of each other. Read 10 pages a day, and in a year, you've read over a dozen books that most people will never open. Walk 20 minutes a day, and in a year, your body has changed in ways that would have seemed impossible if you tried to imagine the destination from day one. Save $20 a day and invest it wisely, and over 20 or 30 years, that becomes real financial freedom, while people who never started remain exactly where they began, wondering where the time went. This is the entire secret hiding in plain sight. Nothing about your future gets built in dramatic leaps. It gets built in tiny, repeated deposits that feel meaningless in the moment and become undeniable over time. Let's talk about why this is so hard for people to actually act on, even when they understand it intellectually. Because understanding something and living by it are two completely different things. The problem is that the human brain is wired to respond to immediate rewards far more powerfully than it responds to future ones. This wiring served our ancestors well for hundreds of thousands of years, when immediate threats and immediate rewards were the only kind that mattered for survival. But in the modern world, the same wiring works against almost every meaningful goal a person has. The immediate reward of scrolling your phone for 20 minutes feels far more real right now than the distant reward of having read another book by the end of the year. The immediate comfort of the sofa feels far more real than the distant reward of a stronger, healthier body 5 years from now. So people, without even realizing it's happening, keep choosing the small immediate reward over and over again, sacrificing the much larger future reward, one tiny decision at a time. This is why the 95% of people who never build the life they wanted didn't fail, because of one giant mistake. They failed because of thousands of tiny, invisible trades, trading their future for their present, one small decision at a time, for years, without ever noticing the pattern until it was far too late to get those years back. Let's talk about the flip side of this, because understanding the problem is only half the picture. The other half is understanding what the 5%, the people who do build extraordinary futures, actually do differently on a daily basis. And it's not what you'd expect. It's not that they have more willpower. It's not that they never feel tempted by the same immediate comforts everyone else feels tempted by. What they've actually done is far simpler and far more available to everyone. And that's this. They've made the connection deeply, emotionally, not just intellectually, between their tiny daily decisions and the future those decisions are building. When they're deciding whether to read or scroll, they're not just thinking about the next 20 minutes. They're thinking about the person they're becoming, one page at a time. When they're deciding whether to save or spend on something unnecessary, they're not just thinking about today's purchase. They're picturing the version of themselves 20 years from now, either free or still trapped, depending entirely on this one small decision repeated consistently. This shift, seeing every small choice as a vote for a specific future rather than an isolated moment with no consequences, changes everything about how a person moves through an ordinary day. Let me paint two pictures for you, because I think this is where the whole idea really comes to life. Picture the first person. Every morning, they wake up and let the day simply happen to them. They check their phone before their feet even hit the floor, and the next 20 minutes disappear into notifications and other people's lives. They grab whatever's fastest for breakfast, usually something that leaves them sluggish. By mid-morning at work, they do just enough to get by, telling themselves they'll really apply themselves once things settle down, once the timing is better, once they feel more motivated. In the evening, they tell themselves they'll read that book, start that side project, have that important conversation. But the television is right there, and it's easier, and surely one more night won't matter. And it doesn't, not on its own, but the same pattern repeats tomorrow, and the day after that. And the day after that, none of these individual choices feel like a crisis. None of them would show up if you asked this person to describe their life in a single sentence. And yet, stretch this pattern out over 10 years, and you get a person who is puzzled, genuinely puzzled about why their life looks nothing like what they once imagined for themselves, without ever being able to point to a single dramatic moment where it all went wrong. Now picture the second person. Their morning doesn't look dramatically different on the surface. They also wake up tired sometimes. They also feel the pull of the phone the second they open their eyes, but they built a small buffer, even just 10 minutes, before checking it. And they use that time for something that moves them forward. Even something as simple as stretching or writing down what matters most for the day ahead. Their breakfast isn't perfect, but it's a little more intentional than grabbing whatever's closest. At work, they look for small ways to add more value than they're asked to, not because anyone's watching, but because they understand that becoming excellent is built in the unglamorous, unwatched moments, not in the rare moments someone happens to notice. In the evening, instead of collapsing into hours of mindless distraction. They spend even 15 or 20 minutes on something that serves the future they're building. A book, a skill, a conversation they've been avoiding. None of these individual choices look impressive from the outside. Nobody's clapping. Nobody's posting about it. But stretch this pattern out over 10 years, and you get a person who has quietly, steadily become someone almost unrecognizable from where they started. Not through any single heroic effort, but through the simple compounding of tiny decisions made consistently, day after day, when nobody was watching and nothing seemed to be happening at all. Let's talk about something that trips up almost everyone at some point on this journey. And that's the frustrating, sometimes discouraging truth that the results of these tiny decisions are almost never visible in the short term. This is exactly where most people give up, right before things would have started to show. Someone starts reading every day, or saving a little each month, or working on a skill in their spare time. And after a few weeks, they look for proof that it's working, and they don't see much of anything. The book pile has barely dented their ignorance about the world. The savings account still looks embarrassingly small. The skill still feels clumsy and unimpressive. And so, feeling like the effort isn't paying off, they quietly stop. Here's what they don't understand, and what I need you to understand deeply if you're going to make it further than most people ever do. The compound effect is almost invisible for a long stretch of time, and then it becomes undeniable. All at once, this is simply how compounding works. In your finances, in your health, in your relationships, in your skills, there's a long, quiet middle section where very little seems to be happening. And it's precisely in that quiet middle section, the part that feels like it isn't working, where most people quit, just before the results would have finally become visible to everyone, including themselves. Now, let's talk about something Jim Rohn spoke about that applies perfectly here. The idea that we don't get in life what we want. We get in life what we are. And who we are is not decided by the rare big decisions we make a few times in a lifetime. It's decided almost entirely by the small, repeated decisions that fill up the space of an ordinary day. You don't become disciplined by making one disciplined decision. You become disciplined by making a small disciplined decision, and then another one, and then another one, until eventually discipline stops being something you have to think about and simply becomes who you are. You don't become wealthy through one lucky investment. You become wealthy through 1,000 small decisions to save instead of spend, to invest instead of indulge. Repeated so consistently over so many years that wealth becomes the natural result rather than a stroke of luck. This is why watching only the big moments in someone's life, the promotion, the big purchase, the visible success, will always give you a distorted picture of how that life was actually built. The real construction happened in 10,000 small, invisible moments that nobody outside that person's daily life ever got to witness. Let's talk about the role that environment plays in all of this, because your environment has an enormous influence on which small decisions feel easy and which ones feel like a constant uphill battle. If your kitchen is stocked with food that works against your health goals, you're not just relying on willpower to eat well. You're fighting your own environment multiple times a day. And eventually, everyone loses that fight. Not because they're weak, but because nobody can win a battle against their surroundings forever. If your phone is sitting face up on the desk while you're trying to focus on something important, you're not lacking discipline when you get distracted. You're simply responding exactly the way any human brain would respond to a buzzing, blinking device designed by very smart people specifically to capture your attention. The people who consistently make good small decisions haven't necessarily developed superhuman willpower. Many of them have simply engineered their environment so the good decision becomes the easy decision, and the harmful decision becomes just a little more inconvenient. This might look like leaving your book on your pillow so it's the first thing you see at night instead of your phone. It might look like keeping your walking shoes by the door, so leaving for a walk requires one less decision than staying inside. These changes feel almost too small to matter. And that's exactly the point, because the whole idea we're exploring today is that nothing that shapes your future ever feels big enough to matter in the moment it's happening. Now let's talk about something that quietly derails so many people on this path. And that's the trap of all or nothing thinking. Someone decides they're going to start eating healthier, and then they have one unhealthy meal at a birthday party, and they think, well, I've already ruined it. I might as well finish off the week eating whatever I want and start fresh on Monday. Someone decides they're going to save money every month, and then one month, an unexpected expense throws off their plan. And they think, this clearly isn't working for me. And they abandon the whole effort completely. This pattern, turning one small slip into a complete collapse of the entire plan, is one of the biggest reasons good intentions never turn into a different future. Here's the truth that needs to replace that old pattern of thinking. A single decision, even a poor one, has almost no power over your future on its own. It's only when a single poor decision turns into a repeated pattern that it actually starts to shape where your life goes. Missing one workout doesn't undo months of progress. Overspending once doesn't erase years of careful saving. What actually matters, more than any single decision, is what you do immediately after a slip. Do you return to the pattern the very next day, treating the slip as simply one moment in an otherwise long story? Or do you let one small slip convince you the whole story is already over? The people who build extraordinary futures aren't the ones who never slip. They're the ones who've learned not to let a single slip turn into an abandoned future. Let's talk about time for a moment, because time is really the hidden ingredient that makes all of this work. And understanding it properly will change how urgently you treat your daily choices from this point forward. Most people think about time in terms of days, sometimes weeks. They ask themselves, will this decision matter this week? And when the honest answer is no, not really, they use that as permission to let the decision slide. But the people who build remarkable futures have trained themselves to ask a completely different question. Not will this matter this week, but what happens if I make this exact decision every single day for the next 5 years? That single shift in the time frame you're evaluating a decision against changes everything. Watching 1 hour of television tonight clearly doesn't matter on its own. But watching several hours of television every single night for the next 5 years adds up to thousands of hours, entire months of your waking life that could have gone towards something that actually built the future you say you want. Skipping one workout clearly doesn't matter on its own. But skipping workouts as your default pattern for the next 5 years adds up to an entirely different body, an entirely different level of energy, an entirely different quality of life than the one you'd have built by simply showing up consistently instead. Once you start evaluating your daily decisions against a 5-year timeline instead of a 5-hour one, you start to see clearly which small choices are quietly building the future you want, and which ones are quietly building a future you'll regret. Now, I want to address something that might be sitting in the back of your mind right now. A kind of quiet resistance to everything we've talked about so far. And it sounds something like this. This all makes sense, but my life feels too busy, too complicated, too full of responsibilities for me to actually change these small daily patterns. And I understand that feeling completely, because almost everyone feels it at some point. But here's the truth that tends to cut through that resistance. Nobody who has ever built an extraordinary future did it by finding more time than everyone else. Everyone gets exactly the same 24 hours. What separates the people who build the future they want from the people who don't isn't the amount of time available to them. It's what they choose to fill that time with in the small, forgettable pockets that exist in literally everyone's day. Whether that's the 20 minutes before checking your phone, the drive to work, the time spent waiting for something, the hour after everyone else in the house has gone to sleep. These small pockets of time exist in every single life, no matter how busy, and reclaiming even one of them Using it consistently for something that builds toward the future you want can completely reshape your life over the years, without requiring you to somehow discover more hours than everyone else has been given. Let's bring this back to something deeply personal, because I want you to actually feel this, not just understand it intellectually. Think about your life exactly 1 year from today, not some distant, abstract future, just one single year from now. If you continue making the exact same small decisions you're making today, waking up at the same time, eating the same way, spending your evenings the same way, learning the same amount, saving the same amount, where does that path actually lead? Be honest with yourself here, because the answer matters more than almost anything else in this video. If the honest answer is that this path leads somewhere you're genuinely excited about, then keep going, because you're already doing the quiet work that builds a future worth having. But if the honest answer makes you a little uncomfortable, if you can already sense that one more year of these exact same tiny decisions leads somewhere you don't actually want to end up, then today, right now, is the moment to change one small decision. Not everything at once, just one. Because trying to change everything at once is exactly how most people burn out and give up within a couple of weeks. So let's make this practical, because I don't want you to walk away from this video simply feeling inspired for the next 20 minutes and then falling right back into the exact same pattern by tomorrow morning. Choose one tiny decision you make every single day that you know deep down is quietly building a future you don't actually want. It might be the 20 minutes you lose to your phone before you even get out of bed. It might be the money that quietly disappears on things that don't actually matter to you. It might be the conversation you keep avoiding with someone you love. Whatever it is, choose just one. Then choose one small replacement decision. Something so easy you'd feel almost silly not doing it. 5 minutes of reading instead of 20 minutes of scrolling. $10 moved into savings before you can spend it on something unnecessary. One honest sentence said out loud instead of swallowed down again. Commit to that one tiny replacement. Not forever, not perfectly, just for today. Then again tomorrow. Then again the day after that. Remember, none of this will feel like it's working for a while. And that's not a sign to quit. That's simply the price of admission for the compound effect to eventually take hold and start showing up in ways you can't ignore. Your future is never going to be built in one dramatic moment. It's being built right now, today, in the ordinary, unremarkable decisions you're making before you even finish watching this video. The good news, real good news, is that this means you don't need a miracle to change your future. You don't need to wait for the perfect circumstances, the perfect motivation, or the perfect moment to finally begin. You simply need to start paying attention to the tiny decisions you've been making on autopilot and begin choosing, on purpose, the ones that build toward the future you actually want to live in, instead of the one that simply happens to you while you're busy waiting for someday to arrive. If this video gave you something to carry with you into tomorrow morning, something that changes how you look at even one small decision today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now, because we've got so much more of this journey ahead of us. And I don't want you to miss a single part of it. Like this video, share it with someone in your life who needs to hear this today. And until next time, keep building, one small decision at a time. And remember, your future isn't waiting somewhere out there for you to find it. It's being built right now, in this very moment, by exactly the choice you make the second this video ends.